the 34th Annual Rocks Gap Heritage Day. We're glad that you're here. If it's your first time, we're glad for you, and if it's more than your first time, we're extra glad for you too. If you've been here more than once, you know Dr. Peggy Shifflett, and who doesn't need an introduction because she's so famous in our area, but I'll tell you more about her anyway. Dr. Peggy Shifflett was born in the Allegheny Mountains west of Harrisonburg, and we know that's where that is. She now lives in Salem, Virginia. She's a graduate of James Madison University and Texas A&M University, where she earned her Ph.D. Peggy's a retiree from Radford University, where she served as chair of the Department of Sociology and Anthropology and professor of sociology. Peggy's written 5 books about her experiences growing up in Appalachia, which we know is Rocks Gap and Hopkins Gap area. The first one is titled Red Flannel Rag, Memories of an Appalachian Childhood. This book won the 2006 Shenandoah Valley Folklife Award for Preservation of Shenandoah Valley History. Her other books deal with food hunting and preservation, the life cycle of traditional Appalachian families, toys and games, and mountain women's influence on future generations. Today's topic is her brand new book, Mountain Men of Hopkins Gap, Migration, Survival, and Violence. So please welcome Peggy Shifflett.
Appreciate y'all coming out to see me. Can you hear me? We in the back? Okay. This is my latest endeavor, and it delves a lot more in history. So this book is about the men that, like my grandfathers, so that generation of people. And so not Hopkins Gap men today. They're very changed, which I will remark at the end. The purpose of this show is to show, I want to show you the consequences of prohibition, which I have been studying. Prohibition, the worst amendment ever passed by the United States government, because it specifically to Hopkins Gap and other Appalachian communities, it brought competition and killings and arguing and fighting about who was making moonshine and who wasn't and who they sold it to and that sort of thing. So I just want to talk a little bit about that, and then I want to focus on my relatives who migrated to Hopkins Gap from Greene County in the late 1800s, and mostly that happened between 1880 and 1890. But we can't see where they ended up or who moved where when, because the 1890 census was burned by accident. Slide. As you can see here, Hopkins Gap is a part of Appalachia. Some people argue with me and say it's not even a part of Appalachia, and yes it is. Because if you look at West Virginia on this map, Hopkins Gap is right, just a little bit to the right there, right on the edge, but it's still Appalachian. And as I've always said, culture doesn't stop at a boundary. It kind of flows over once in a while. Slide. As you well know, and I'm not thinking you're stupid, there are 2 ranges that flank the Shenandoah Valley. One is the Allegheny Range and the Blue Ridge Range to the east. Hopkins Gap, slide. Hopkins Gap is located in the Allegheny Range. Greene County, slide. Greene County is located just over on the other side of the Blue Ridge Mountains. And Skyline Drive cuts right through it. And that's where 4 families migrated to Hopkins Gap between 1880 and 1900.
You have to use the mic, please. The mic.
Closer to the mic.
Yes, please.
Thank you. The Morrises, the Shiffletts, the Conleys, and the Crawfords took that rugged trip across the Blue Ridge, through the valley, and over the Little North Mountain to Hopkins Gap. Now, this next part, next couple slides are going to scare you into thinking that you can't know what I'm talking about, and that's exactly true, because I'm talking about who I'm related to, and it's scary. And also, my co-author here, Lori Bennett, she's in the same situation. You can't tell who you're related to. Okay, the migrating family, the Morrises. So my great-grandfather, Adam Morris, left Greene County with his wife, Frances Crawford, with 3 children, and he had 3 more children in Hopkins Gap. So the one in dark there, the one in red, John Wesley Morris, is my grandfather, and Lori's great-grandfather. John Wesley Morris married a local girl once they got to Hopkins, and he was 1 year old when they got here. And when he got old enough to marry, he married Mary Ella Lamb, who was a member of the Lamb family that was established in Hopkins Gap. And they had 18 children, and they raised 12 of them to adulthood. Now it gets more complicated. Whoops, I missed the Shiffletts. Oh, the Shiffletts. Now there's a mess. Hiram Banks Shifflett, who is my great-great-grandfather, brought his girlfriend, wasn't married, Frances Jane Crawford, to Hopkins Gap with 2 sons, John Austin Shifflett, who was my granddaddy, and Warnie Shifflett, who's somebody's granddaddy in here, I forget who it is. There she is, yeah. Those were 2 boys he had by Frances Crawford, and to make the story really complicated, Frances gave her children Hiram Banks' last name when she wasn't married to him, so my real name is Crawford. Peggy Ann Crawford. Well, John Austin, he gets all, ready to marry, and he meets my grandmother, Molly Frances Crawford, who was his parallel cousin, which means their mothers were sisters. So they're closer than first cousins. They share actually 25% of the DNA. So he marries Molly Crawford, and they had 10 children and raised all of them to adulthood. And the only issue with their children, except they were always depressed. Some of them were mean as snakes. And these are my aunts and uncles I'm talking about. And 3 or 4 of them were deaf. So I'm saying they were a little too close, and that's how that happened. Then in come the Conleys. Man, it gets complicated. Joseph Banks Conley, born in 1854, brought his wife Millie Morris to Hopkins Gap. And they had 2 sons who had died prior to their move, and the one son that lived was John Martin Conley. John Martin Conley married Cornelius Lamb, who was a sister to my grandmother, Mary Lamb, and they had 5 children. Cornelius had those 5 children, boom, 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 and she died at the age of, I think, 29 or something. But anyway, John Martin Conley married Nettie Sowers Conley, and they had 11 more children. So John Martin Conley had 16 children. Now the Crawfords, now here is where the trouble starts. The Crawfords all sprang from one family in Greene County. That was Wade Crawford and his wife, Mary A.E. Conley. They had 7 children. They had Frances Jane Crawford, who married my granddaddy, my great-granddaddy Adam Morris, so she is my great-grandmother on my mother's side. And he had she married Adam Morris, unbelievable. Simeon Brannaman Crawford was another child of Wade. He married Diana Conley, and they had 8 children. And Frances Jane Crawford is the one who birthed my grandfather, Austin Shifflett, and his brother. So both of my great-grandmothers are Frances Jane Crawfords. One of them spells her name with an I-S, and that's the only difference.
It's all in the book.
It's all in the book.
So I'm already confused and I wrote.
She's right, and she's confused. So I understand. Matilda Crawford, her sister, Frances' sister, had one child by a man named Angus Shifflett, who was already married. They never married. And Molly Francis is my grandmother, who married John Austin Shifflett. All right. Mahalda Ann Crawford gave birth to are we moving?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Gave birth to twins who migrated to Hopkins Gap, and their name is Simeon Brannaman Crawford and Joseph Banks Crawford. They're buried side by side in the Gospelville Mennonite Church Cemetery. Then a child of Simeon's his name was James Robert Joseph Jackson Crawford, married Diana Conley, and Diana Conley. They birthed John Oscar Crawford. Are y'all familiar with these names?
This is really confusing here, because if you notice Simeon and the twins, Simeon and Joseph, the twins, their uncles were also named Simeon and Joseph on the previous side.
Yeah, they used
So she named her twins after her brothers.
Right.
And that makes it doubly confusing. So when you see James Robert Joseph Jackson, that is the son of Simeon, that's Simeon the uncle. And that's why it gets so confusing.
because
It's not the same person, it's a
They didn't
different
get
person.
out much. They just copied each other's names. Now, you notice through all this that the Shiffletts and the Morrises and the Crawfords and the Conleys were all marrying each other. Yeah. That marriage pattern continued in Hopkins Gap. So I'm going to show you, this is the next slide, this is it, yeah. The 18 children that my grandparents, my mother's parents had, and who they married. So there's 7 there.
Back up a slide.
Back up the slide.
Yeah. 3 of them married Shiffletts and 4 of them married Crawfords. So they're in marriage. And that's why I'm stumbling today, because I'm, a consequence of incest, perhaps. Okay. Next slide. They all had the same kind of culture. This is what becomes interesting, I think. Appalachian culture had its roots in the 1700s with the Scots-Irish culture. They practiced, and I have studied this, and most cultures around the world have something similar to this. It's a culture of honor, which means it's good or bad. Culture of honor means that a man is supposed to protect his family, take care of them. And on the other hand, if someone comes in and invades his home, he has a right to shoot him, or kill him, or hurt him, or something. The culture of honor. You get in my space, you're dead. They had a strong distrust of authority. They hated the revenue men. They had independence and physical strength. And the test of that in my family was my brothers each had to carry a half a hog from the poles where he was split in two into the house, into the meat house. And I watched them do this, all three of them, my brothers. The one that had the hardest time was Larry because he wasn't much bigger than me, but he carried that hog. So physical strength. They had the moonshine tradition, which was brought from Scotland. In Scotland, they made something called pot liquor, and they drank it as needed, and we also had some other good uses. Then they had the Protestant religion, and these people could not read or write that I'm talking about here. Somehow they knew that men were superior to women. She had to keep her mouth shut. It's called patriarchy. Rigid gender roles. Women had a role and a man had a role. That's not really true, in fact, because women often helped the men. Like my mother helped make moonshine when my daddy was working. It means that the men in the family own the husbands, the brothers, and the fathers, own the women, the sisters, and their mother-in-law. So that is the kind of culture we're talking about. Next. Okay, this is a map of Hopkins Gap in 1885, and it shows you people settled along the Shoemaker River. On the left of the picture is the Hopkins Mountains, and on the right of the picture is Little North Mountain. So these migrants came and settled all in among the people who were already here. And they all began surviving together. They lived together, married each other, got into anger once in a while, mad fights, stuff that people do. Next slide. This back one, they got along. And here's 4 generations of people making sauerkraut on the left. There's Morris's, Conley's, Shifflett's, and Crawford's finishing up a hog butchery in the middle. And on the right-hand side, because they loved the land, they had a deep connection to the land, and you understood the land. That's my great Uncle Joe plowing his garden in the spring. Moonshine, I want to talk about that. It's a very important part of the culture in Hopkins Gap. Every family in Hopkins Gap had some moonshine on hand. You had to have it. It was part of what you had. They had it to drink, possibly, and to sell, maybe, to trade. They had to share with or trade with neighbors. They had to treat colds and coughs and children. In fact, they gave it to me and I need some today. They mixed honey and moonshine and give you a spoonful. It was wonderful stuff. They drenched sick cows and horses with moonshine. I watched my mother take a pint of moonshine. She grabbed her cow in the nose with her hand, opened her mouth, and the cow was kind of not eating, kind of being lazy and slow. Well, she perked up. She perked up really hard after that. course is the same. If you got a snake bite, you know how they used to treat snake bites, they used to cut across where the bite is and try to get the poison out. Put a little moonshine on that, it kills the pain. And it kills the pain of surgery. Now my dad, Norman Shifflett, he had this quote. He said this to me many times. Moonshine was just a part of life. It was a good way to reduce our extra corn and rye into a manageable product. Every family in Hopkins Gap made moonshine except one, and they were bootleggers. Next. That's it. Then along comes 1920, and they pass an amendment in this country that prohibited people from drinking, for God's sake. And it lasted until 1933. Well, Prohibition absolutely destroyed the culture in Hopkins Gap. It was very harmful to America. And at home, they lost billions of dollars because they couldn't make whiskey anymore. Therefore, it was destructive to Hopkins Gap. Back one. Next. Okay, here's how it, when Prohibition came, did people stop drinking? No. They poured out the liquor in public, but in the meantime, they had these places called speakeasies, where you could go and drink all you wanted to. Those speakeasies got their supply of liquor from little people like Hopkins Gappers making moonshine. So they go there and buy it from them and up the price and sell it to the speakeasies so people can have their booze. What happened to Hopkins Gap? Prohibition in Hopkins Gap. Next. Oh, so they really welcomed bootleggers. People who liked their whiskey welcomed the bootleggers. More the merrier. No questions asked. Then focusing on Hopkins Gap, what happened? Well, it was nice because for the first time, men could, men could make whiskey and sell it and have money to buy food for their family, clothes, shoes, for the kids. So in doing that, and this is so important, it introduced competition in an otherwise cooperating community. Men went out to the junkyards and found the old washing machines and took out the copper barrel in it. And that's back one. That's my moonshine still. My very own. It's in Salem Museum now, but it's going to come up to Rockingham Museum in a month or so. They found ways to make a lot of moonshine, because this is like 40 gallons of mash would go into that, and it gets distilled out into liquid. That came from my Uncle James Shifflett. He paid a doctor's bill with it one time. He didn't have money, and he owed the doctor for treating his wife, and it was $50. And he said, I don't have the money, but I'll trade you my still. And the doctor said, let's go get it. And they did. But next, here's an example of how bad the competition was. This is my great uncle Joe Mars and his wife Millie. And competition, the distrust, and the spirit brothers and uncle spirit nephews. This picture demonstrates the severity of distrust. His nephew, Charlie Morse, stood outside that window behind Joe's window, behind Joe's right, and shot a rifle through the window and knocked out the lamp that was in the middle of the table. With a warning. He turned me in. Okay. Here's some more examples of neighbors not getting along with neighbors. And I got these from Rockingham County Courthouse. These are actual court cases. So by 1922, just 3 years after the Volstead Act, which is prohibition, neighbors began reporting each other for making and selling moonshine. At its April 1922 term, the grand jury do present that Brian Conley did unlawfully manufacture, sell, offer, keep, store, and expose for sale, give away, transport, dispense, solicit, advertise, and receive orders for ardent spirits against the peace and dignity of the state of Virginia. He was reported, excuse me, by Clarence Payne, to whom he had given liquor, moonshine. Clarence Payne reported him because he was too young to be drinking. Behrman Crawford, one of the Crawford twins, I think that would be, and a man named J.C. Cooper. Here's another one. Laco Carr and Laney Falk did in October 1929 unlawfully manufacture, and I won't read that whole thing to you again, against the rules of the state of Virginia. Reported by John Martin Conley, Brian Conley, Joseph B. Morris, who got shot at through the window, Frank Conley, and Michael Lamb. So Brian Conley is now reporting his neighbor who reported him, just a short time before that. Laco Carr, on or about June 12, 1932, did unlawfully have in his possession about 1/2 gallon of ardent spirits against the peace and dignity of the state of Virginia. He was arrested on the testimony of Nettie Conley, Virgie Ray, Hiram Dove, and Rachel Ray. What else happened after Prohibition? Next. Prohibition was when my uncle goes to jail for making moonshine. There he's been caught. And he had, I believe, 8 children at the time. So his wife, Lula, had to deal with her 8 children, feed them and all that stuff. His wife was suddenly responsible to care for the large number of children he had. Thanks to Lori, I have included some letters that her great-grandmother.
This picture is interesting, because the man in the middle with his arm around the revenuer, he's the one being arrested. It doesn't even look like it in the picture. Was he shot there?
He was shot in the heel.
That's why they're holding him up.
When the revenue officers came and they fired over his head, and as his foot went up in the air, the bullet went in the leather of his heel.
That's Gilbert Morris, by the way,
Yeah.
in the middle. And the other 3 are...
He was one of the 18 children. Anyway, Zilla Carr, same thing happened to her. Her husband, Wally Carr, who's on the front of the book. They exchanged letters. He was in prison for 18 months, and they exchanged letters in 1935. Zilla had, next, Zilla had 11 children to provide for. And I have quotes from some of her letters, 1935. Unbelievable. She's left with 11 children aged 15 to 18 months old. While she was delivering the mail one day, her brother-in-law came in the house and beat 2 of her children, the boys, until they cut the blood out of one. She came home and found the kids, and the man who beat them thought it was fun, made fun of them. So she couldn't go earn her living without fear of her children being victimized by the mean-ass men. Her daughter Irene got pneumonia soon after the neighborhood girl had died of pneumonia. So Zilla's writing to tell her, this is what I'm dealing with. Her daughter has pneumonia, and the little neighbor girl just died, and I'm afraid she's going to die. Next, she said, these are different letters, tons of letters. We sure had a bad winter. The children don't have clothes, and I don't have anything planted in the garden. The 18-month-old child is sick. She was diagnosed with worms. I gave her a dose of medicine, and she passed 75 worms in less than a day. I'm scared she's going to die. And she almost did. And the other letters are about, it's so rainy, I haven't gotten the garden in yet, I haven't got the corn planted. Very hard, very hard. 1935. Okay. Here's my famous quote from this whole damn thing. There was anger. There was moonshine. And moonshine oiled the wheels of anger and turned it into violence. Next. Okay, that's good. Not next year. Domestic violence, abuse of women and girls, and alcohol. Culture of honor comes into play here. Women could not challenge men. I rode with my parents as they took my cousins to Harrisonburg to try to get some money on Friday night before they drank it up. So their kids, so she could feed the children.
Hey, get closer to the microphone.
Oh, so she could feed the children. We watched them get slapped, and they were drinking. It was alcohol that was greasing the wheels to violence. Another thing is they thought, many of them, and it's not all men, these were a selection of Crawfords and Shiffletts and Morrises. Conley's not so much. Any female is fair game. So when I was a child, 16 years old, I loved to hunt. And 2 different men told me at different times, I'm going to watch for you in the woods, and when I find you, I'm going to have my way with you. And I said, what if I see you first? I never had to shoot anybody. Any female is fair game. And there are stories, absolutely pitiful stories of some women that I knew as I was growing up. So the use of alcohol released inhibitions toward violence. So violence came in the form of murder. In 1906, Philip Richard III was murdered by Charles Shoemaker. They'd been in a squabble for a couple of years, and it was Christmas, and they were celebrating Christmas. And Charles Shoemaker stabbed Philip Richard III to death. 7 years later, this is the culture of honor creeping in here. 7 years later, Philip's son, David Ritchie, shot up the Shoemaker family, but he didn't kill them. He tried, but he didn't kill them. David was my uncle, married to my daddy's sister, Mabel. Another murder based on the culture of honor was the murder, next slide, the murder of Andy Carrier by Lansing Knight. Lansing and Andy were mad at each other, something to do with the moonshine still. They were kind of fighting over who did belong to, that sort of thing. So Andy kept coming to Lansing's home and taunting him. And Lansing warned him to stay away or he would kill him. Well, Andy showed up one more time. And he got killed. He had a sack across his back with a whole still in it. And he was going to drop it. And Lansing just shot him because he said he was. Then in 1936, Tom Crawford was killed by a revenue agent while he was making whiskey. In this case, he was shot in the back of the neck. He bled to death at the still. And in the Hopkins Gap culture of honor way, one of my uncles went to East Virginia and found that revenue agent and shot him. You shocked? Any questions, anybody at this point? Another murder in 1950, this was the murder of Tom Reedy by Maynard Crawford. Next slide. Back one. Yep. That's right. I don't know the particulars of this murder, but I have heard it was about whiskey and or a woman. It was kind of... Then there's violence and alcohol. The next one is the 1952 murder of John Raleigh Carr. And the picture on the right is Lori's hand holding the bullet that killed her great-grandfather. And that's his death certificate. Gunshot wound of chest involving the heart and the great vessels. This is a murder brought on by drunkenness and the culture of honor. Leonard Caldwell drank moonshine all day long riding up and down the Gap. Stopped at my Uncle James's house and bought some more whiskey. James was a great supplier of moonshine. He was working up the mood to avenge his brother. I didn't tell about Branson, did I? Back one, sorry. Nope, back. Right there. Thank you. Bryson Caldwell was drunk, came to John Raleigh's house, John Raleigh Carr, and he wanted to ask John Raleigh Carr to stop hauling logs across the Caldwell land because it was tearing it up. It was too wet. They got into a discussion, and Branson Caldwell was drunk. And he just took this kitchen table, which was filled with food cooked by my Aunt Pauline, and dumped it. Turned it upside down. And ran out the door and said, I'm going to kill you, Raw, talking to Raw. I'm going to kill you. And he went toward his car and said, I'm going to go get a gun. So Raw Carr runs to the next door neighbor, which is Arthur and May Dove's house, and he borrows a rifle. And when he comes back across the field, Branson was running in from his car toward Rawls' house, and Rawls shoots him. Boom, killed him, dead. He got 18 months, I think, for that.
Rawl did, yeah, he only got 18 months.
Yeah. They deemed it murder and self-defense, or like involuntary murder and self-defense.
It was involuntary manslaughter.
Yeah.
Now go back, skip ahead 2 slides. Next. Now back one.
Backward. I'm talking to the person out there, in case y'all want. This is a murder brought on by drunkenness. And this is where Leonard Caldwell, the brother of Branson Caldwell, rode up and down the road to get up and murder, to avenge his brother's death. So around dusk one day, 1952, 6 years after Rawls killed Branson, Leonard rode up in front of Rawls' barn. He stopped and called Rawls out of the barn. And Rawls leaned over as he approached the truck to see who was calling him, and Leonard shot him in the neck, and he bled to death. And Leonard threw the rifle that he killed him with outside, beside Rawls' body. So there was a culture of honor you need to avenge people who harm their family and drunkenness. The next case, this is a case of a young man, 1952, the same year that Raleigh Carr was murdered. His brother was murdered, Waco Carr. In this case, a young man, AWOL from the Korean War, arrived at Abe Carr's home to visit with his girlfriend. He was so drunk, the girl's father threw him out of the house. So he went next door and stole a shotgun from Earl Hess, went outside and began firing the gun through the windows of Abe Carr's house. And his first shot hit Waco in the back. Didn't kill him right in the back. I think he probably bled to death. Well, Herman kept shooting and wounded his own girlfriend. Shot her in the mouth. Then he ran about 7 miles in the snow. This was about Christmas 2 or New Year's Eve. And the sheriff caught him under a bed in an abandoned campus. He got 40 years.
This is a really fascinating story because it ended up in a published magazine called The Daring Detective. And the story was called Crimson Siege at Hopkins Gap. And it was New Year's Eve that it happened. But it was all published in the magazine and everything. It was really cool. And just as a side note, Blake and Raleigh, their grandfather was Philip Ritchie. So the murder of Philip Ritchie III, these are his 2 grandsons, were Raleigh and Blake.
So before I move on to a couple more slides, Hopkins Gap today is really different. Lots of people living there. It's a beautiful place. What happened to change it mostly was, of course, modernization, but also the big road was carved through Hopkins Gap in 1951. We call it the big road because it was the first road that you could pass 2 cars like that. Before that, it was mud and gravel. What happened with the big road is kids started going to different schools. They could go down to Broadway School, they went up to Turner Ashby High School, and they met a wide variety of people, and they started marrying. Marrying outside Hopkins Gap. So the 3rd generation, all that changed. The women were working outside of the Gap. women decided they weren't going to take a lot of crap anymore. And anyway, meantime, I thought I would, next slide, no, that's it, include that while these men are struggling to live, they serve the country. Civil War, David Carr, that was Raleigh Carr's grandfather. Simeon Brown Crawford, my great-grandfather. Nimrod, you can read, I'm not going to read them to you, but one man, Erasmus Douglas, served in the American Indian Wars, which I thought was interesting. Then World War I comes along, and there's Philip Carr.
Mike.
Can't hear you. Move closer.
Oh, Philip I. Carr, Stanton Lewis Reedy, Charles Ray, and Jenny Riggleman's son, who was killed in action in France. That was 1918 when he was killed. In 1929, the government provided transportation for the mothers of the boys who were killed to visit their grave. And Jenny Riggleman went. This little old woman, one of the sweetest women I ever knew. World War II, my daddy, the Doves, the Crawfords, the Carrs, the Kirkpatricks, and Dwight David Crawford was wounded and earned a Purple Heart. The Korean War, next. Elbert, Kirkpatrick, Sherman, Buck, Crawford, Gene Thompson, who was killed in action. Harry D. Carr, who was killed in action. And a bunch of Conley. And in Vietnam was my brother John William Mason, Herman, Charles, Shirley, and Morris, and Bobby Crawford. And that is the story. It's all in this book in great detail. If you should want to buy a copy, I have a few left today. That's all. Thank you all very much. Any questions?